Good morning, adventurers. My name is Ben, and welcome to a morning show where I sit around, drink some tea, and talk about D&D. All right. The cat is right here. He might bother us as we go here, but for now, he has jumped out of shot and will hopefully be quiet. Oh well. Anyway, first up for T&D today. I don't know if I've actually had this mug on the show yet. I got it for Christmas from my fiance. It is another Help It's Again Caduceus mug, but this one has a cute little Caduceus and some quicksand instead. And inside of that, I have some Raspberry Royale black tea from Bigelow. It definitely tastes like black tea, but there's a little bit of raspberry, mostly actually even in the smell, as opposed to the actual flavor of the thing. But I really like it a lot. So, yeah. Okay. All right. So anyway, let's get into what we're actually talking about today, shall we? So today we're in an effort to sort of round out the ability scores thing that I started earlier this week. I'm going to talk about just how powerful adventurers are. Particularly with relation to the average person. Because why not, right? That seems like a fun thing to do. We are going to run through a couple of things here. And we're going to talk about a little bit of the weirdness with how this is set up. Just because I do think it's a touch odd. But let's talk about a couple of these things real quick, shall we? So, to start off, our baseline, our normal person in 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons has a stat block. It is a commoner. They have ability scores of 10 across the board. They have an AC of 10, and they have 4 hit points. 4 hit points. Big 4. That is pretty dang weak, considering in order to get that as a first level adventurer, you would have to be a wizard or a sorcerer with a -2 constitution modifier. So, to start, you're a lot healthier than your average person anyway, which, again, feels pretty obvious. In addition to that, the standard array of ability scores has 1 10 and 1 score lower than 10. Everything else is above 10, which means that you are starting with 4 out of 6 of your ability scores better than a commoner, assuming that you take, the standard array. That's what I was looking for. So that is, just something to keep in mind. Now, to get to the weirdness bit first, because I want to talk about this before I get into the rest of the stat blocks that I have, or I guess the rest of the stats that I've actually looked at. We're going to take a gander here at the Dungeon Master's screen. This thing, obviously, phenomenal, has a lot of great little quick reference resources on it, but there's one piece of it that I actually really want to talk about. That is the Object Armor class piece. And you might be thinking, well, yeah, I mean, the Object Armor class isn't how hard it is to hit the thing, it's how hard it is to do damage to the thing, which is what Armor class is in general. And that is correct. However, the thing that I want to talk about in here is the fact that in order to damage the weakest thing on this Dungeon Master screen, you have to hit an armor class of 11, which, if you're playing along at home, is 1 higher than that of a commoner. A commoner's armor class is 10. The armor class of cloth, paper, and rope is an 11, which means that if in order to, hurt a piece of paper, you have to roll an 11. But in order to hurt a person, you have to roll a 10. What? That doesn't make any sense. Granted, this is, of course, a fantasy role-playing game where reality isn't real. It doesn't make any sense. But I wanted to get that out of the way as an emphasis to just how weak commoners actually are before we get rolling into this. So now that we are, properly confused by the fact that apparently in Dungeons & Dragons your average person is weaker than a sheet of paper, let's talk about some other average people that you might run across in a D&D adventure. So, in comparison, there we go, to our commoner with an AC of 10 and 4 hit points. We then jump up to cultists, who have an AC of 12 and 9 hit points. So by joining a cult, you have effectively more than doubled your hit points and made yourself harder to kill. Granted, they're still pretty much made of a wet paper towel, but they actually pose a vague threat to a low level adventurer. They potentially have more armor and more health than, your level 1. Anybody with a D8 or a D6, they could have more health than them. In the same vein, in terms of hit points, we also have nobles. They have 9 HP, but they have 15 armor class. And that armor class just comes from them being able to buy nicer armor. But apparently, joining a cult or being rich instantly more than double the amount of damage you can take, according to the 5th edition rule set. Moving up from there, we have our next 2 common humanoids, our bandit and our guard. Our bandit has 11 hit points with a 12 AC, and our guard has 11 hit points with a 16 AC. And that, again, the armor is just what's given to you based on your station in whatever city or whatever. You know what I mean. And so, those are those are the 5 most common humanoids that I broke down for that one. And by humanoids, I mean your average people that you'll find in or around towns. And so we range there from 4 to 11 hit points, and 10 to 16 armor class, depending on what armor they're wearing. Now, I also pulled 3 example monsters here. They are just that. They are example monsters. They are not, the end-all, be-all, but they are a pretty good summation of the kind of thing that you are going to be running into here. So, up first, obviously, we have a Kobold with an armor class of 12, 5 hit points, but their hits deal, on average, 4 damage, which means that a Kobold is deadly to your average person, which makes sense. You're going to notice a trend here with these 3 monsters. The next up that I pulled was a Bullywug, which has a 15 armor class, 11 hit points, and their hits are between 3 and 4 damage. And finally, I pulled a Goblin, which has an AC of 15, 7 hit points, and a hit of 5. So, the reason that I grabbed those, and the reason that I'm bringing them up at all, is because I wanted to emphasize the fact that while these monsters are something essentially that adventurers sneeze at, even low-level ones, when you come across, like, a cave full of kobolds or something like that, you can rip through those pretty easily, honestly. If you have any amount of modifier, you are almost definitely going to be putting them down. Maybe not the Bullywug, but the other ones, if you roll halfway decently and have some kind of modifier added to your roll for damage, you're more than likely going to be actively blowing your way through these, essentially. But it's important to talk about the fact that, like, while yes, to an adventurer, these are absolutely nothing, to a commoner, they're pretty tough, all things considered. And honestly, even to, like, a guard or something who has a whopping 11 hit points, they can be taken down in, 3 hits from any single one of these, essentially. And that's assuming you take average damage. If you do roll damage and they roll well, it takes 2 of them to put one of them down, and the guard will only be able to take out 1 at a time, given the fact that they don't have multi-attack. So I really wanted to, like, emphasize this low end here that we are talking about, because I think that it's something that we honestly, as people who are playing, kind of ignore when we get past a certain point in our adventure. Another good way to sort of emphasize this is that spells like Healing Word and Cure Wounds, they don't heal a whole lot. However, a commoner has 4 hit points. You can bring somebody back from being, like, horribly sick to having full health and being able to go run whatever amount they would normally be able to run, I guess. Go back to work or whatever it is, because they are, able to turn around and do that with the help of this healing magic that massively, massively heals them. Additionally, a healing potion, just a basic healing potion that costs 50 gold, which is an insane amount to a commoner, obviously. But a basic healing potion that costs 50 gold heals 2d4 plus 2 hit points. That means you are getting bare minimum 4 hit points out of it, which means you are absolutely 100% healing a commoner with this healing potion, no matter what. There is no, that's it. You are just absolutely going to be healing this commoner completely with the single healing potion, so that you can so that they can turn around and go back to whatever they were doing. Now, on the flip side of that, we have those insane monsters that are way up there. I didn't go for like the aspect of Bahamut or anything like that. I didn't go for the CR30s when we were talking about this. But I went ahead and I pulled maybe the most iconic Dungeons & Dragons monster, the Ancient Red Dragon. This thing, on the other hand, has 546 hit points, which means it has more than, like, oh god, I didn't do the math ahead of time. Let's get a calculator here while I vamp. Its armor class is 22, which is absurd considering the commoner's armor class is less than half of that. And their hit points at 546 are 136 times more than that of a commoner. That is ludicrous. Also, them being in the same space as commoners means that they will die immediately. Their plus 17s to hit on all of their melee attacks will guaranteed hit, assuming they don't have a 1 on one of their rolls. And their breath, obviously, that deals 26d6 damage, will wipe out massive swaths of people as they go through. So, hopefully that helps contextualize a little bit, because you will have adventurers that fight this thing and win. And then there's everybody else in the world. There's a reason that adventurers are the superheroes that they are, and there's a reason that I put them in that category of superhero when I am assigning the sort of scale that I put those ability scores on. And that really is kind of the point of why I'm making this video, this episode, this whatever as a whole, because I want to emphasize the fact that, like, I understand they aren't actual superheroes, but compared to your average person, they are beyond superhuman, genuinely beyond superhuman. And I think that that is something we don't actually talk about all that much. We just sort of like get used to the fact that they can get hit with dragon breath or a mind blast or a death ray and be totally fine. So that is everything I have to talk to you guys about with regard to that. Moving on from that to the shows that we have happening today and this weekend, because it is in fact Friday. We have a whole lot, again, because it's 3 days worth of shows and there's a lot of stuff that comes out on Sunday in particular. But first off, on Friday, we have Mayhem D&D, Off the Rails, Oxventure, Just Roll With It, Strings of Fate, Rolling with Difficulty, World of Low, and The Crowned DM. On Saturday, we only have 2 shows. We've got Dice Funk and Strange Hungers. And then on Sunday, we have Super Idols, Roll for Your Life, Grinning Griffin, Dungeon Drunks, Library of Nightmares, The Chaos Brigade, Rise of the Forsaken, Chromatic Dice, The Strodcast, and High Rollers. So go get yourself a little bit of D&D this weekend. It is a good weekend for it, for no other reason than it is yet another weekend where you could fill your time with some Dungeons and Dragons. So go check out those shows, show them some love. I don't know, tell them I sent you. They don't know who I am for the most part, but that's fine. Yeah, I think that's everything I have to talk to you guys about today. So this one is actually a much shorter episode than normal. Than I have been doing. I've been doing over 20-minute long, and I want to keep it more in the, like, 15 to 20 range. So we're actually, I guess, right on time, but a little on the lower end of that. But anyway, all that said, thank you guys so much for making me part of your morning routine. I really do appreciate it, and thank you so much in particular to my patrons. You guys are the ones that make this whole show possible. So thank you very much for that. If you're interested in becoming a patron, there's a link to my Patreon in the description of this episode. Yeah, I believe that is everything that I have to talk to you guys about. Thank you so much once again for tuning in, and don't forget, drink tea, play D&D, and keep on rolling.